While I was trying on my wedding dress, Julian's best friend suddenly tagged me on Snapchat. Stella, the invitations are shipping the day after tomorrow. Have you noticed the bride's name isn't yours yet? Looking at myself in the mirror, draped in the pure white gown, my mind went entirely blank. The next second, a voice note from Julian's childhood buddy, Carter, popped up in the group. I bet Julian a grand that you wouldn't notice until you got the physical invite. He changed the bride's name to Melody. You're way too carefree, Stella. Tell Julian to change it back quick, or are we still having a wedding? I slowly unzipped the wedding dress, feeling a sudden wave of nausea wash over me. Melody Evans was Julian's first love, the legendary one that got away, in their elite social circle. Yet, marrying me was a vow Julian had made solemnly in front of both of our families. And now, during the wedding prep, they were using my self-respect as a pawn for their bets. Julian, you're wicked. I bet she'll be crying and begging you to take her back once she finds out. I bet she won't even dare to lose her temper. Whoever loses pays for next month's yacht party. Then, a special notification buzzed on my phone. Melody had posted a photo set on Instagram, wearing a limited edition wedding gown. Thank you for giving me my dream wedding dress, Julian. Beneath it, Julian had commented with a red heart emoji. I calmly tapped the like button on her post. Then, I deleted the Snapchat wedding planning group and booked a one-way ticket to Alaska. The wedding was off. I'd rather go freeze in the mountain wind to clear my mind and wash the dirt from my eyes. The harsh fluorescent lights of the bridal boutique reflected off the mirror. I folded the heavy train section by section and handed it back to the assistant. The assistant hurried after me with a measuring tape, smiling. Miss Vance, do we still need to take another half-inch off the waist? Mr. Sterling said everything has to be absolutely perfect. I looked at the white tool in her hands, my voice flat. No need. Cancel the order. Give this dress to the next customer. The assistant froze, chasing me down with the contract. Miss Vance, if you cancel now, the fitting fees and the deposit cannot be refunded. I pulled my card from my designer bag and pressed the pen down. Deduct whatever you need to. Just don't contact Julian Sterling again, and don't call my parents. When I walked out of the store, the afternoon sun was so blinding it made my eyes water. On my phone, the wedding planner was still messaging me about the color palette of the flower wall. I leaned against the sidewalk railing, systematically canceling the hotel block, the florist, the makeup artist, and the limo service. The cancellation fees drained $5,000 from my account instantly. The wedding planner sounded incredibly hesitant. Miss Vance, does Mr. Sterling know about this? He just called this morning to change the bride's nameplates to Miss Evans. He said it was just a joke. Staring at the transaction success screen, I said softly, he likes to play games. Let him plan the rest himself. My mother's call cut in. In the background, I could hear the loud laughter of her country club friends. She lowered her voice, but couldn't hide her smug excitement. Stella. Julian's assistant just delivered a trunk of designer perfumes and limited edition bags. Everyone here is talking about how lucky you are. He also promised you the biggest wedding in the city. Stop being so stubborn. Men have to socialize. Just swallow your pride and it'll pass. I asked her, Mom, what if the name on the invitation isn't mine? My mother paused, her voice instantly turning cold and sharp. Don't talk nonsense. A man like Julian willing to marry you is a miracle for our family. Don't make a scene over nothing and embarrass both families. I let out a soft laugh. I get it. Enjoy the bags, Mom. After hanging up, I dialed Julian. The moment the call connected, Melody's soft, giggling voice drifted into my ear first. Someone in the background cheered, Julian, Stella is checking up on you. Coax her quick, or the bride might actually run away. The harsh fluorescent lights of the bridal boutique reflected off the mirror. I folded the heavy train section by section and handed it back to the assistant. The assistant hurried after me with a measuring tape, smiling. Miss Vance, do we still need to take another half-inch off the waist? Mr. Sterling said everything has to be absolutely perfect. I looked at the white tool in her hands, my voice flat. No need. Cancel the order. Give this dress to the next customer. The assistant froze, chasing me down with the contract. Miss Vance, if you cancel now, the fitting fees and the deposit cannot be refunded. I pulled my card from my designer bag and pressed the pen down. Deduct whatever you need to. Just don't contact Julian Sterling again, and don't call my parents. When I walked out of the store, the afternoon sun was so blinding it made my eyes water. On my phone, the wedding planner was still messaging me about the color palette of the flower wall. I leaned against the sidewalk railing, systematically canceling the hotel block, the florist, the makeup artist, and the limo service. The cancellation fees drained $5,000 from my account instantly. The wedding planner sounded incredibly hesitant. Miss Vance, does Mr. Sterling know about this? He just called this morning to change the bride's nameplates to Miss Evans. He said it was just a joke. Staring at the transaction success screen, I said softly, he likes to play games. Let him plan the rest himself. My mother's call cut in. In the background, I could hear the loud laughter of her country club friends. She lowered her voice, but couldn't hide her smug excitement. Stella. Julian's assistant just delivered a trunk of designer perfumes and limited edition bags. Everyone here is talking about how lucky you are. He also promised you the biggest wedding in the city. Stop being so stubborn. Men have to socialize. Just swallow your pride and it'll pass. I asked her, Mom, what if the name on the invitation isn't mine? My mother paused, her voice instantly turning cold and sharp. Don't talk nonsense. A man like Julian willing to marry you is a miracle for our family. Don't make a scene over nothing and embarrass both families. I let out a soft laugh. I get it. Enjoy the bags, Mom. After hanging up, I dialed Julian. The moment the call connected, Melody's soft, giggling voice drifted into my ear first. Someone in the background cheered, Julian, Stella is checking up on you. Coax her quick, or the bride might actually run away. I hung up. The Sterling family group chat was blowing up with new notifications. Julian's mother had posted 9 photos with the caption, finally met the lovely Melody whom Julian always talks about. So elegant and polite. No wonder everyone adores her. The photos were from an exclusive Sterling family brunch. Melody sat right next to Victoria Sterling, and Julian was leaning in to serve her food. Victoria Sterling messaged me privately soon after, Stella, Melody has traveled a long way back. We are just hosting her. Don't overthink this. A Sterling bride needs to show some class. I replied, Mrs. Sterling, Julian and I are over. The wedding is cancelled. She called me immediately, her voice sharp and demanding. What is wrong with you? Julian is willing to settle down and marry you, which is already giving your family plenty of face. I put the phone on speaker on the table and continued taping my boxes. She tried to suppress her rage. Melody is Julian's first love. It's normal for a man to have a past. If you hold on too tight, you'll only push him away. I said, then let him go. The line went quiet for a moment before Victoria sneered. Don't you dare regret this. The Vance family has accepted so many of our favors. If we make this public, your family will be the one begging for mercy. I hung up, throwing every plush toy, couple's mug, and photo album Julian had ever given me into a heavy-duty trash bag. At the bottom of the closet sat a half-knitted gray sweater. I had been knitting it for Julian. His hands always got freezing cold in the winter. I grabbed the end of the yarn and pulled. The wool unraveled around my feet, looking exactly like the boundaries I had repeatedly compromised over the last 3 years. The donation truck arrived quickly. The driver lifted the heavy bags and asked, Are you sure you don't want any of this, miss? I nodded. None of it. Throw it away or recycle it. The apartment slowly emptied out until only the spare key was left hanging by the door. Suddenly, the lock clicked. The door swung open, and Julian walked in, pushing 2 large pink suitcases. Julian scanned the empty living room, his brow furrowing. Why is this place so empty? Melody peeked out from behind him, still holding the cat, her voice timid. Stella, am I intruding? Julian pushed the suitcases inside, his tone completely matter-of-fact. The pipes burst in her apartment. It's not safe for a single girl to stay in a hotel. She's going to stay here with us for a few days. I asked, in which room? Julian pushed the bags toward the master bedroom. Melody has trouble sleeping in unfamiliar places. She'll take the master bedroom. Go clean up the guest room. Melody quickly grabbed his sleeve. Julian, don't. Stella will be upset. I can just sleep on the couch. Julian patted her hand to comfort her. Your health is delicate. Don't make yourself suffer. He looked at me, his eyes cold. You're going to be the mistress of this house anyway. Can't you be a little generous? This isn't my house. Julian's face relaxed slightly. At least you know that. I paid for this penthouse. Just because you picked out some furniture doesn't mean you get to make the rules. I reached out and took the keys off the hook. The metal felt ice cold against my palm. Melody said softly, Stella, don't misunderstand. Julian is just worried about me. You're still the most important person to him. I looked at her. Was the movie you guys saw last night good? Melody's eyes flickered with guilt. Julian immediately stepped in front of her. Are you ever going to drop this? What does Melody owe you? I said, she doesn't owe me anything. You do. Julian stared at me, a sarcastic smirk playing on his lips. Here we go again. Stella, every time you're unhappy, you threaten to break up. Isn't this getting old? I grabbed my packed suitcase. The wheels rolled across the hardwood floor, making a sharp, distinct sound. The smirk faded from Julian's face. Where do you think you're going? I put on my shoes by the door, my voice incredibly calm. You don't need to clean the guest room. You two can have this whole place to yourselves. Julian, we're done. Melody's eyes instantly welled with tears. Stella, this is my fault. I'll leave right now. Please don't ruin your wedding over this. But Julian held her back, his eyes turning dangerous. Let her go. He leaned against the doorframe, his voice tight with anger. If you walk out that door today, don't expect me to chase you. You have 3 days to come back and apologize. If you do, I'll pretend this never happened. I opened the door. Julian added, Stella, I won't cover for you with your parents. When they start asking questions, you deal with them yourself. My steps paused for half a second. For the past 3 years, my mother had bragged to everyone about how well I was marrying. My father had paraded the expensive whiskey and cigars Julian sent him in front of all our relatives. Julian knew how much I dreaded disappointing them. He always knew exactly where to stab. Melody chimed in softly, Stella, your parents love Julian so much. You're being so selfish. I turned back to look at Julian. Changing the bride's name on the invites, taking her to meet your family, letting her sleep in my bed, and I'm the one being selfish? Julian went silent for a second, but his arrogance quickly returned. We can talk about all of that later. Get back inside. Who are you trying to put a show on for? I placed the keys on the shoe rack. Julian's eyes locked onto them, and his brow twitched. You're leaving the keys. I replied, like you said, you bought this place. Now that someone else is sleeping in the master bedroom, it's not appropriate for me to keep these. His face completely darkened. Stella, do you have to be this dramatic? I didn't answer. I pulled my suitcase into the elevator. Before the doors slid shut, Julian's voice echoed down the hall, Stella. If you walk out now, don't you dare come crawling back. As the elevator went down, I tossed the spare keycard straight into the trash chute. My phone buzzed. It was Claire, the shelter director. Stella, a National Geographic documentary crew is coming tomorrow to film some conservation footage. Can you help us out for one last day before you officially leave? They're looking for a veterinary consultant, and I think you'd be perfect for it. I typed back, sure. The moment my screen went dark, Melody's Instagram popped up with an update. She was standing in front of the master bedroom's floor-to-ceiling window. Her caption read, after all the detours, I'm finally back where I feel safest. The next morning, I arrived at the shelter with my suitcase. I changed into my scrubs, the familiar scent of disinfectant washing over me. As I was bending down to adjust the heating lamp for a puppy that had just come out of surgery, the courtyard outside suddenly erupted into chaos. Claire walked into the clinic room, wiping her hands, her face incredibly tense. Stella, the National Geographic crew was filming, but Melody's PR team suddenly barged in with their own cameras. My hands paused. Who authorized that? Claire lowered her voice. The shelter's main donor called and said Melody needs a charity angel shoot. Julian is out there with her too. The documentary director, Zach Thorne, looks absolutely furious. He's just standing there with his crew, mocking them. I walked out to the courtyard. Melody was standing by the cages in a pristine white dress, surrounded by cameras. She bent down, attempting to lift a golden puppy that had been neutered just yesterday. I immediately blocked the cage door. He's not even 24 hours post-op. You cannot hold him. Melody looked up at me, her smile dripping with sweet innocence. Stella, I just want to show everyone how cute he is. People will only donate if they see how sweet he is. Julian stood just outside the camera frame, frowning. Stella, don't make a scene here. I stared right into his eyes. His incisions haven't healed yet. If something happens, who takes the blame? The air in the shelter's courtyard was tense, thick with the smell of damp earth. And the chemical tang of cheap hairspray. Melody Evans took a step back, her lower lip trembling in a way she had likely practiced in front of a mirror. Stella, I didn't mean to. I just wanted to help. The internet loves animals. If I post this, the shelter gets exposure. The only thing you're exposing is your own ignorance, I said, my voice steady. Though my chest burned with a cold, sharp anger. I stepped between her and the cage of the golden retriever puppy. This animal was under anesthesia less than 24 hours ago. His heart rate is unstable, and his abdominal sutures are fresh. If you pick him up for a photo, you risk reopening the incision. But I suppose a veterinary emergency makes for a better headline than a routine donation, doesn't it? Behind Melody, the cameraman she had brought along lowered his rig, looking uncomfortable. Julian's face darkened. He stepped forward, his leather shoes clicking sharply on the concrete. Stella, that's enough. Melody is trying to do a good deed. You don't have to bring your personal grudges into her charity work. If you're jealous, just say so. Jealous? A low, dry chuckle broke the silence from the edge of the courtyard. We all turned. Standing by a pile of heavy-duty camera crates was a man in a faded wax canvas jacket and mud-splattered hiking boots. He was tall, with broad shoulders and the kind of wind-burned complexion that only came from spending months in the high altitudes. Zach Thorne, the lead director for the National Geographic expedition, took a sip from a battered thermos. I've shot conservation footage on 6 continents, Mr. Sterling, Zach said, his voice deep and entirely unimpressed. And I've seen a lot of vultures. But usually, they wait until the animal is dead before they try to profit off it. Julian's eyes narrowed. Who the hell are you? Do you know who funds this? Shelter's expansion? I don't care if you bought the dirt we're standing on, Zach replied calmly. He walked over, his stride slow and deliberate, and stood right next to me. The sheer contrast between him and Julian was stark. Julian, with his pristine designer suit and styled hair, looked entirely out of place, like a plastic toy dropped in a forest. This is an active National Geographic closed set. Your PR team barged in without a permit, disrupted a delicate post-op recovery, and violated our filming contract with the Global Board. If a single frame of our equipment or our staff, including our consultant, Miss Vance, ends up on your girlfriend's social media, my legal team will have a lawsuit on your desk before your lunch meeting. Melody's face flushed a deep, embarrassed red. She grabbed Julian's arm, her voice rising in a squeak. Julian, he's exaggerating, right? We just wanted a quick video. Julian tried to maintain his composure, but the twitch in his jaw betrayed his fury. Thorn, is it? Sterling Enterprises has deep pockets. We can buy out your production's local permits by noon. Try it, Zach said, a faint, cold smile touching his lips. The National Geographic Society is backed by international scientific trusts. I'd love to see your board's reaction when you explain why you spent millions of dollars of company funds to settle a lawsuit over a puppy photo shoot. He turned his back on Julian, completely ignoring him, and looked down at me. His eyes, a striking, deep gray, softened. Dr. Vance, the transport truck for the Anchorage flight is loaded. We're ready when you are. I'll be right out, Zach, I said. Julian froze. Anchorage? Stella, what is he talking about? I didn't answer him. I walked past Melody, who shrank back, and entered the clinic's back room to grab my duffel bag. When I came out, Julian was waiting for me near the exit, having broken away from Melody and her crew. Stella, stop this ridiculous game, he hissed, grabbing my wrist. I looked down at his hand, then up into his eyes. There was no anger left in me. Only a profound, exhausting disgust. Let go of me, Julian. You're going to Alaska? For how long? The wedding invitations. The invitations have Melody's name on them, I interrupted quietly. The venue is cancelled. The florist is cancelled. I've already withdrawn my name from the marriage registry. There is no wedding, Julian. There is only a party you and your friends can pay for. I told you, that was a joke. Carter and the guys were just messing around. It's a high society tradition to play these kinds of pranks before. A prank? I let out a soft, dry laugh. You used my self-respect as a bet for a yacht party. You let your mother parade Melody around as the ideal bride while I was running around organizing your family's registry. You let her sleep in the bed I chose. If that's your idea of a joke, then my leaving should be the punchline. I pulled my wrist from his grip. It was surprisingly easy. He didn't have the strength of someone who actually cared, he only had the desperate grasp of a man losing his favorite toy. If you walk out to that truck, Stella, Julian warned, his voice dropping into a low, threatening register, your father's logistics company loses the Sterling shipping contract by tomorrow morning. Your mother will never show her face at the country club again. I will personally ensure your family is ruined in this city. I looked at him, really looked at him, the sharp, handsome features that I had once loved, now twisted by malice and petulance. My parents chose your bags and your money over their own daughter, I said, my voice barely a whisper, yet carrying perfectly in the quiet courtyard. If they want to keep playing your games, they can pay the price. I'm done paying it for them. I turned and walked toward the waiting transport truck. Zach was leaning against the passenger door. He opened it for me, handing me a warm jacket from the back seat. You all right? I've never been better, I said, climbing in. As the truck pulled out of the courtyard, I looked in the side mirror. Julian was standing in the gravel, his hands clenched into fists, while Melody hovered behind him, looking unsure of whether to comfort him or check her phone. I turned my eyes forward, toward the open road. The air in Alaska didn't just feel cold, it felt alive. It was a sharp, biting cold that filled your lungs like crushed glass and cleared out the lingering dust of the city. We arrived at the Denali Wildlife Conservation Center late the next evening. The sky was an infinite sheet of deep indigo, painted with the faint, green ribbons of the aurora borealis. Welcome to the end of the world, Dr. Vance, Zach said as we stepped off the small propeller plane onto the tarmac in Healy. It's beautiful, I breathed, watching my breath bloom into a thick cloud of white steam. It's honest, Zach corrected gently, tossing our bags into the back of a rugged, mud-caked Ford Bronco. The mountains don't care who your father is, and The wolves don't care about your social standing. You survive on what you can do, not what you can buy. For the next 2 weeks, I threw myself entirely into the work. My days began at 5 a.m. As the chief veterinary consultant for the documentary and the local rescue program, my job was to oversee the tracking and medical evaluation of a wild wolf pack that had been displaced by a recent oil pipeline survey. We spent hours trekking through the snow-laden spruce forests, checking trail cameras, collecting hair samples, and ensuring the pack's alpha female, who was carrying pups, remained healthy. In the evenings, the crew gathered in the main lodge, a cozy, cedar log building, smelling of pine wood smoke, hot coffee, and wool socks. Zach was a quiet, steady presence. Unlike Julian, who demanded the spotlight in every room he entered, Zach was content to listen. He watched the world through his lens with a deep, patient reverence. One night, as we were cataloging footage by the fireplace, Zach handed me a mug of hot cocoa with a splash of peppermint schnapps. You look different than you did in the city, he noted, leaning back against the wooden bench. How so? I asked, warming my hands against the mug. In the city, you looked like you were constantly holding your breath, he said, his gray eyes catching the reflection of the firelight. Like you were trying to occupy as little space as possible so you wouldn't get in anyone's way. Here. You take up the whole room, Stella. You're brilliant at what you do. The way you handled that injured lynx yesterday, most vets would have tranquilized her immediately, but you knew exactly how to calm her down. I felt a strange, unfamiliar warmth bloom in my chest. I've spent the last 3 years being told that my career was just a cute hobby. Julian's mother once told me that veterinary medicine was a dirty job, and that I should focus on charity galas instead. Zach's brow furrowed, a hard edge returning to his features. Some people have so much money they've managed to completely rot their own brains. To look at someone with your skill, your dedication, and see a hobby, it's pathetic. It is, I agreed softly. But I let them do it. That's the part that hurts the most. I let myself believe that if I just compromised a little more, adjusted my boundaries a little further, I'd finally be enough. You were always more than enough, Zach said, his voice dropping to a quiet, firm sincerity. They just weren't big enough to see it. Before I could reply, my phone, which had been sitting on the table, began to vibrate violently. I had blocked Julian, his mother, and my parents. But this was an unknown number, with a local area code from back home. I picked it up. Hello? Stella. Thank God. My mother's voice was hysterical, shrill enough that even Zach could hear it in the quiet lodge. You have to come back right now. Julian has completely cut off your father's shipping contracts. The bank is threatening to call in our business loans, and Victoria Sterling has cancelled our membership at the country club. They're telling everyone you're a thief who ran away with Julian's family registry funds. I felt a cold wave of indifference wash over me. I didn't run away with any funds, Mom. I canceled the vendors and let the deposits pay for the cancellation fees. The rest of the money went back into Julian's account. But the shame, Stella. The shame, she wailed. Melody Evans is everywhere now. She's posting pictures in your wedding venue, but the caterers are refusing to work with her because you were the one who had the personal relationships with them. Julian is furious. He says if you don't return within 48 hours and sign a public apology, he's going to sue your father for breach of contract. Then let him sue, I said coldly. Are you insane? My mother screamed. He's Julian Sterling. We will lose everything. Our house, our cars, our standing. You chose his bags and his perfume over your own daughter's dignity, Mom, I said, my voice steady and ice cold. You told me to swallow my pride and that a man like Julian marrying me was a miracle. Well, the miracle is over. If you and Dad want to keep your lifestyle, I suggest you find another way to fund it. Don't call me again. I hung up the phone and immediately blocked the number. Zach was watching me, his expression unreadable. Your family? The people who share my DNA, I corrected, setting the phone down. But not my family. Not anymore. Zach reached out, his warm, calloused hand briefly covering mine. Good. You deserve better. Back in the city, the Sterling penthouse was in a state of absolute chaos. Julian sat at the dining table, a half-empty glass of scotch in front of him. The floor was littered with crumbled papers, fabric swatches, and wedding brochures. What do you mean, they won't do the flower wall? Julian snarled into his phone. I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling, the wedding florist's voice was polite but completely unyielding. Our contract was with Miss Stella Vance. She was the one who designed the floral arrangements and coordinated the color scheme. When she canceled the contract, we took another client for that weekend. Even if we had the capacity, our head designer refuses to work with anyone else. Miss Vance helped rescue our shelter dogs last winter. We do not appreciate how this situation has been handled. Julian slammed the phone down, rubbing his temples. Melody stepped out of the master bedroom, wearing a silk robe that Stella had bought. Julian, honey, the caterer just called. They said they can't source the organic white truffles Stella ordered. They want to substitute them with standard ones, but it's going to cost 20% more because of the late change in the menu. Then let them substitute it. Julian shouted, his temper snapping. Melody flinched, her eyes immediately filling with tears. You don't have to yell at me. I'm just trying to make sure our wedding is perfect. It's not my fault Stella is being so petty. It's not your wedding yet, Melody. Julian snapped, the words slipping out before he could stop them. The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. Melody stared at him, her face pale. What do you mean by that? You changed the invitations. You told your mother I was the one you wanted. You said Stella was just a convenient choice because her family was easy to control. She was easy to control, Julian muttered, staring at the empty wall where Stella's oil paintings used to hang. The apartment felt vast, cold, and strangely clinical. When Stella lived there were always fresh flowers on the counter, the scent of lavender and vanilla in the air, and a warm, home-cooked meal waiting for him when he came home late from board meetings. Now, the kitchen was sticky with takeout boxes. The trash was overflowing, and the cat Stella had forbidden Melody from holding had scratched up the custom leather sofa. Julian, Carter's voice boomed over the speakerphone as he joined the call. Man, have you seen the internet? Your little prank is blowing up. Julian frowned. What are you talking about? Someone leaked the Snapchat screenshots of our bet to the local high society forums. It's bad, bro. People are calling you a classless bully. Some of the elder board members at Sterling Enterprises are asking why our stock is dipping. They're saying this bride-swapping scandal makes the company look unstable. Julian's blood ran cold. Who leaked it? Who do you think? Probably one of the bridesmaids Stella canceled, Carter sighed. But that's not the worst of it. Look at National Geographic's official Instagram page. Julian quickly opened his laptop. The latest post was a video clip from the Denali Conservation Series. It showed Stella, dressed in professional field gear, kneeling in the deep snow beside a wild, tranquilized gray wolf. She was checking the wolf's vitals with a calm, practiced precision. Her hair was tied back, her cheeks flushed with the cold. And she looked utterly breathtaking, vibrant, intelligent, and completely out of his reach. The caption read, introducing Dr. Stella Vance, our lead veterinary consultant for the Alaska Wilderness Project. Her dedication and expertise are helping us protect the wild heart of Denali. True beauty lies in purpose. The comments section was flooded. She is amazing. So professional and brave. Wait, isn't this the Stella Vance who was supposed to marry that Sterling guy? The one who changed her name on the wedding invites for a bet? Yes. She literally dumped his toxic ass and went to save wild wolves in Alaska. Icon. Behavior. Julian Sterling really thought he was an upgrade when he had a literal goddess of a scientist. What a clown. Julian's hand shook so hard he almost dropped his glass. Julian. Melody whispered, looking over his shoulder. Why are they saying these things about us? I'm the charity angel. I'm the one they should be admiring. Shut up, Melody, Julian growled, standing up so fast his chair scraped violently against the floor. He walked over to the closet, looking for something, anything, to restore his sense of control. His hand brushed against a drawer, and he pulled it open. Inside was a soft, gray bundle. It was the half-knitted sweater Stella had been making for him. The wool was unraveled, a chaotic pile of loose, tangled gray string. He remembered how she used to sit on the sofa, her needles clicking softly in the quiet evenings, smiling up at him whenever he walked by. Your hands are always cold, Julian, she had said. I'm making this so you'll always be warm. Even when I'm not there. Now, there was only the cold, unraveled yarn. A sudden, desperate panic seized Julian's chest. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was the realization that Stella hadn't just walked out of his apartment, she had walked out of his life, and she wasn't looking back. Pack your bags, Julian told Melody, his voice hollow. Melody blinked. What? Why? We're going to Alaska. The weather in Healy turned vicious within 48 hours. A level 4 winter storm warning was issued, with winds howling down from the peaks of Denali at 60 miles per hour. The snow was a blinding, white curtain, reducing visibility to less than 5 feet. In the warmth of the research station, the radio crackled to life. Station 1, this is Ranger Davis. We've got a situation. A private helicopter just made an emergency landing near the old mining cabins at mile marker 14. The passengers are uninjured, but they're completely stranded. The cabin has no heating, and the temperature is dropping to -15. Zach grabbed the radio receiver. Davis, this is Thorne. Who are the passengers? Do we need to dispatch the snowcats? It's a private party from the lower 48, the ranger replied, his voice muffled by static. Some hotshot businessman named Julian Sterling and his entourage. They were trying to reach the Healy private airstrip but got caught in the downdraft. They've got a young woman with them who's showing signs of early stage hypothermia. My heart skipped a beat, not with fear, but with a profound sense of disbelief. Julian. He actually came here. Zach looked at me, his jaw tight. You don't have to go, Stella. I can take the rescue crew. No, I said, putting on my heavy, thermal-lined parka and grabbing my emergency medical kit. If Melody is hypothermic, she needs a medical professional, not just a rescue team. Besides, I want to see the look on his face. Zach stared at me for a second, then a slow, respectful grin spread across his face. Then let's go. The journey to the mining cabins in the heavy-duty Arctic snowcat was a bone-rattling experience. The wind shook the armored vehicle, but Zach navigated the frozen terrain with absolute confidence. When we finally reached the cabin, the snow was drifted halfway up the wooden door. Zach shoved the door open, the howling wind rushing into the dark, freezing interior. Inside, Julian was huddled under a thin, designer wool blanket, his teeth chattering violently. Melody was curled up in a corner, sobbing, her lips a faint shade of blue. Carter and 2 other friends were trying desperately to start a fire in the rusty wood stove with expensive leather planners and paper money. Stella. Julian gasped, his eyes widening as I stepped through the door, looking like an Arctic explorer in my professional gear. You came for me. I came for the medical emergency, Julian, I said, my voice completely devoid of emotion. I walked past him as if he were made of glass and knelt beside Melody. I checked her pulse, her pupils, and the temperature of her hands. Mild exposure. No frostbite yet. Zach, get the thermal blankets and the warm saline packs from the snowcat. On it, Zach said, his tall frame blocking the doorway as he went back out into the storm. Julian stumbled to his feet, his hands shaking. Stella, look, I know you're mad. But this has gone too far. We flew all this way to find you. Your parents are in ruin, my mother is furious, and the media is ruining my company's reputation. You have to come back and fix this. I stood up, adjusting the strap of my medical bag. I don't have to do anything. Julian. Stella, be reasonable. Julian pleaded, stepping closer, though he flinched. When Zach returned, throwing a heavy, military-grade thermal sleeping bag over Melody. I'm willing to overlook all of this. I'll let Melody stay in the guest house. We can still have the wedding. I'll even pay off your father's business debts. Just come home. Do you hear yourself? I asked, looking at him with a pity that was far more cutting than anger. You flew a private helicopter into an active Arctic blizzard, risked the lives of your friends and your pilot, all because your ego couldn't handle the fact that a woman said no to you. I love you, Stella. Julian yelled, his voice cracking. I've always loved you. Melody was just a distraction. A game. A game, I repeated slowly. You played with my life, my family, and my dignity. And now you've lost. It's time to pay the bet, Julian. Suddenly, a low, guttural growl echoed from the open doorway. Everyone froze. Standing in the swirling snow just outside the cabin was a massive, scarred gray wolf. It was the alpha female we had been tracking, the one carrying pups. She had been displaced by the storm, seeking shelter from the wind, and the scent of food from the cabin had drawn her in. Melody screamed, a high-pitched, piercing sound that immediately agitated the wild animal. The wolf bared its teeth, its muscles tensing as it prepared to lung. Shut up, Melody. Zach barked. Julian, terrified, grabbed Stella and tried to pull her in front of him. Stella. You're the vet. Do something. Kill it. I felt a sudden, sickening realization of who Julian really was. In the face of danger, his first instinct was to use me as a shield. I violently shook his hand off my shoulder. Stay still. No sudden movements, I commanded the room, my voice low, firm, and absolutely authoritative. I slowly reached into my pocket and pulled out a small packet of dried beef liver, a treat I kept for the shelter dogs, but one that carried a strong, familiar scent of meat. I tossed it gently onto the snow outside the door, far away from the cabin entrance. Go on, girl, I whispered, my voice soft and soothing. There's nothing for you here. Go back to your den. The wolf looked at me, her intelligent, golden eyes locking onto mine for a long, breathless moment. She smelled the meat, snatched it up, and then, with a quiet huff of her breath, turned and vanished back into the white fury of the blizzard. The cabin was dead silent. Julian was shaking, his face pale as paper. He looked at me, then at Zach, who was standing beside me with his hand on his hunting knife, ready to protect me at a second's notice. You used me as a shield, Julian, I said, my voice barely a whisper, yet it sounded like a thunderclap in the quiet cabin. That is the last time you will ever use me. I turned to Zach. Melody is stable enough to be moved. Let's get them to the ranger station. Right behind you, Stella, Zach said. As we walked out of the cabin, Julian called out one last time, his voice sounding small and defeated against the howling wind. Stella, please. I didn't turn around. 3 months later, the spring sun had finally begun to melt the thick snows of Denali. The National Geographic documentary, The Wild Heart of Alaska, premiered to a global audience. It was an instant sensation, praised for its raw, honest look at wildlife conservation and the unsung heroes who dedicated their lives to it. The breakout star of the series was Dr. Stella Vance. Her intelligence, her quiet strength, and her absolute refusal to back down in the face of danger captured the public's imagination. Her social media following exploded, not with high society gossip, but with young girls wanting to study veterinary medicine and animal lovers supporting her new conservation foundation. In contrast, the Sterling family's fall from grace was spectacular. A leaked video of the rescue cabin, captured by one of the Nat Geo crew's body-mounted cameras, showed Julian Sterling attempting to pull his ex-fiancée in front of him to shield himself from a wild wolf. The footage went viral, completely destroying his reputation as a rugged, high-society alpha male. The board of Sterling Enterprises, facing massive public backlash and a plummeting stock price, officially stripped Julian of his executive duties. Melody Evans's social media channels were deactivated after an online campaign exposed her charity angel photo shoot as a fake, animal-endangering PR stunt. She was dropped by her sponsors and quietly retreated from the public eye. My parents tried to call me several times, sending long, apologetic emails about how they had been fooled by the Sterlings and wanted to rebuild our family. I forwarded their emails to a financial planner, setting up a modest, monthly allowance for their retirement, enough to keep them comfortable, but not enough to buy their way back into the high society circles they had prized so much. I had given them what they wanted, money. But my life, my time, and my love were no longer theirs to buy. One evening, Zach and I stood on the wooden deck of our newly built cabin, overlooking the vast, green valley of Healy. The spring wildflowers were beginning to bloom, painting the mountainsides in vibrant shades of yellow and purple. Zach walked up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist and resting his chin on my shoulder. What are you thinking about? Just how clean the air is, I said, leaning back into his warmth. No fluorescent lights. No fake smiles. No expectations. Just us, Zach whispered, kissing the side of my neck. In my hand, I held a physical letter that had arrived in the mail today. It was an invitation to a charity gala back in the city, sent by a prestigious veterinary association. The bride's name on the envelope was blank, left for me to fill in. I smiled, crumpled the paper into a tight ball, and tossed it into the recycling bin by the door. Yes, I said, turning in Zach's arms and looking up into his beautiful, gray eyes. Just us.